What is the real reason behind the Iran-Israel war? It's not about nuclear weapons, because Iran doesn't have any. According to the annual threat assessment by the US intelligence community, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and its nuclear program was suspended in 2003. If you trust the US intelligence and you trust the US president, you've got to trust that Iran has and doesn't have nuclear weapons, which would be a good case for a psychiatrist. Also, the US doesn't mind other countries developing nukes. When North Korea, India and Pakistan developed their own nukes, the US was fine. Didn't say a word, didn't lift an eyebrow. And it's not about overthrowing a dictatorship, because the US is friends with many dictators. For example, here, the US president is shaking hands with one of the leaders of Al-Qaeda. Well, a former leader, allegedly. If you're an American, tell me, how does it make you feel that the American president is all smiles with an Al-Qaeda leader? But if it's not about the nukes or politics, then what? What is the hidden reason for this war? I am an economist. I am a boring mainstream economist. And I look beyond the headlines to find the hidden economic forces. And in this video, I claim that the real reason for this war is economics. The US wants to take the Iranian oil, wants to divert attention from Trump's failures and to strike against China. It's a strike against China and Europe. I bet you didn't expect that. You probably already knew the first two reasons, but I bet you have never heard the third one. So stay with me for a few minutes and we'll come to the most secret aspect of this war. In 2003, the US attacked Iraq because Iraq had nuclear weapons, which it didn't. And now the US attacks Iran because Iran might have nuclear weapons, which it doesn't.
So we go in, we blow up countries, and then we leave.
Before we continue, let me digress. Everybody can see how similar these two wars are. A Republican president attacks a country in the Middle East because he hallucinated the weapons of mass destruction. Those weapons are fake, but the wars are real. And yes, these two wars are similar, but the US economies are different. In 2003, the US had a small debt, small budget deficit and low inflation. And now the US has a record public debt, record budget deficit and rising inflation. The US economy is weaker now than it was in 2003. And the weak economy can't sustain a successful war. But let's go back to the US plans. The US wants to take the Iranian oil, just like it took the Iraqi oil. Look at the biggest oil companies working in Iraq today. And you probably want to say, hey, no American companies. Yes, but if you look at their biggest shareholders, you will see BlackRock and Vanguard. The American companies reap benefits from Iraqi oil. And the US wants to do the same to Iran. Ultimately, it's the war for resources. Talks about freedom, security, nuclear weapons make as much sense as Joe Biden's health. Not at all. Is it going to happen? No. The US can't take the Iranian oil without the ground operation, without the boots on the ground. And the US can't afford that. The US is broke. If the US couldn't afford the war in Afghanistan, if the US lost to Taliban, they can't win against the much more powerful Iran. And the second reason for this war is obvious. It's distraction. It's a distraction from Trump's failures. Donald Trump promised to bring peace to Ukraine within 24 hours. He didn't. He promised to bring peace to Gaza. He didn't. His trade deals are a joke. When Saudi Arabia and Qatar exchanged empty promises for the latest US technologies. Trump imposed tariffs and cancelled them the very next day. And grateful Americans are throwing fireworks across the country. So the president needs a good distraction from his failures, and the war is a good distraction. Will it work? Yes. The media is already full of the war coverage. The media loves wars. And nobody is asking uncomfortable questions about tariffs, inflation, and public debt. For the media, economics is boring and wars are fun. But you're smart, you want to know economics, and I salute you. This is the news the media doesn't tell you. In May, Iran launched a new railway to China. It's part of the Belt and Road Initiative, $400 billion worth and 6,500 miles long. And the media ignored it, but the White House took it seriously, because this railway makes Iran the new transit hub. Iran is becoming the link between Europe and China. Iran can now ship its oil directly to China and avoid the US sanctions. Iran reinforces its ties with China, boosts its economic resilience, and reduces its reliance on maritime networks. China is the biggest buyer of the Iranian oil when it buys up to 90% of the Iranian oil. A strike against Iran is a strike against China. And that's why it's not Israel against Iran, it's America against China. Donald Trump is killing two birds with one stone. He's striking both China and Europe. One of them is an ally, the other is an enemy, but Trump doesn't care because these two regions are the two main competitors of the US. And Donald Trump is dealing a blow to both of them. By setting this region on fire, Donald Trump is cutting China from Iran and Europe from China. Will it work? Yes, it will work in the short run. But it will fail in the long run. In the short run, yes, the US is weakening the second biggest economy and the third biggest economy of the world. Congratulations, America. But in the long run, this policy will bring Europe and China closer. But that will happen years from today, and Donald Trump, the senior president, doesn't care about the long-run implications of his policies.
How stupid are we?
But that railway has one weak link. It's Central Asia. Because it passes through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. So if Donald Trump is serious about striking China, he must hit those countries. So he will probably revive the USAID. They will suddenly get concerned about human rights and democracy in those regions and start revolutions in those countries. Assuming, of course, they don't start a revolution inside the US first. This was my take on the US-Iran war. Do you agree with me? Do you agree that the real reason and the only reason for this war is economics? Put your comment below. I read all your comments and I thank you for them. Let's pray for peace and I'll talk to you next time.